Hi, everybody. מעולה. Give me a sec. There we go. I've never seen my presentation on such a big screen. I love the facilities here. Hi, everybody. My name is Karen. How long have you been in Israel already? 4 days. You're sleep deprived? Jet lagged? Okay. And how much longer are you staying? 6 more. Are any of you staying here afterwards? Anywhere are you going to Europe or Thailand or? Europe. All right, Europe. Great. What have you done today? Who have you? Okay. Because I was going to start with having you play some games with my app, but it seems like you had a fun day. But I don't know. Games? Yeah. Games, okay. How many have iPhones? Okay. And do you have Wi-Fi, data, all that? Okay, that's good enough. So, self-explanatory. יש לך? Password is 1 through 8. The Wi-Fi is Taglit Innovation, and password is 1 through 8. What? 1 through 8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
That. I knew you guys were smart. Taglit Innovation, and download Tel Aviv Museum, because the slides I have are.
What is that called?
Museloop, and then you'll get Israel Museum and Tel Aviv Museum. Tel Aviv, yeah. Download Tel Aviv.
Which one?
No, but I have an extra iPhone if someone wants to borrow.
That one was my iPhone?
Sorry? Museloop, and it's the Tel Aviv Museum. The logo changed now. They got angry with us for using their logo. Anyone wants to borrow? The Tel Aviv Museum one. Okay. This guy's already out.
I was going to be able to get this.
Tel Aviv Museum, yeah. Is it downloading? Slowly. Okay, so I'll start. Let's let it download for a bit, and I'll start talking, and then we'll get to the games in a little bit. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the startup. We're going to play some games, and then I'm going to kind of go back and tell you a bit more about myself and my personal story and how I became to be the CEO of this cool startup. And then I'll open it up to questions, because otherwise you'll fall asleep on me, and we don't want that. Yes, no? This was supposed. Technology. Okay. So a little bit about my team. So this presentation was not, I'm sorry, it was not created especially for you, so we're going to jump a little bit back and forth. So Museloop, what is our vision? Our vision is to take museums to the 21st century. Did you guys go to Israel Museum yet? Is that part of the, are you going to go? You won't. Tel Aviv Museum? No museums. Okay. But you're going to go to Europe? Are you going to go to museums when you're in Europe? Yeah. Maybe? A little bit? Sort of?
In the Hall of Independence.
In the Hall of Independence. Yeah. Okay, we don't have an app there yet.
Oh, okay. Too bad.
So what we noticed, for ourselves and speaking with museums, is that there's something broken about the museum experience. And it's people your age or younger who are don't really get it, don't want to go, don't go as much. But it's not only people your age, it's people my age, it's older people who tell me, and we know that from museums, we know that from speaking to people, and we know that because it's just our gut feeling that there's something wrong about museums. We don't want to go there. And we're there, we usually don't really know what we're supposed to do, what's the purpose. And we know in our heads, right? We know that museums are important, we don't want them to disappear, we know they hold vast amounts of culture and art and self-expression and history. And what we did, we believed that museums should exist. They should absolutely exist, and they're going to be here for centuries. But they need a twist. They need something to shake them up, and that's what we did with Museloop. So, do you have the app? Yeah. Hands up if it's ready. If you're ready. Not enough hands. Yeah. Okay. So imagine yourselves walking into Tel Aviv Museum. If you go to the entrance hall, the app sends you to find the artwork and play. So this is the piece you're gonna see. The actual mural is actually even bigger than what you see right now. It's a huge piece. It's by Roy Lichtenstein, and I think the first question is to find the floating fiddler.
It's on. Did you go to the first stage? I mean, I can.
Yeah, one more, one back.
I can.
There you go.
Oh, cool. I gotcha. It's like never a good idea.
Yeah, Tel Aviv Museum entrance hall, the purple game, the Roy Lichtenstein. Stein.
It's a video?
No. Find the floating fiddler. Ha. All right. Yeah.
Phone ran out of battery.
Ah. Well, you can help these other guys.
Oh, wow.
It's a reference to another painting.
What are you looking for? Oh, the path to the gallery. So I'm going to give you a little hand here because you're not at the museum. But when you look at the painting and then you look back at the path, there are these lines, like this path going up to the galleries, and it looks exactly like these angles here. So that's really what the path to the galleries looks like. Which is actually a great example of how this is part of a museum visit. So the idea here is that you play in the museum. So it's kind of.
I'm up to 20 moves and I'm not doing too bad.
Yeah, I'm on 15 moves. Do the green.
Nice.
I'm like a brush stroke that stands out.
Oh, yeah. Do you see on the top left?
Should I go to the next classroom?
Oh, that's not what I thought they were talking about. I gotcha.
I'll show you the next picture in a sec, yeah.
So is this like one museum?
Yeah, so it's the same museum. Everybody found everything? If you go to the next game, it's a little puzzle. That's the artwork.
That's the artwork?
Yes. Just now make this look like that. Scan. So the last game in this little series is it's the green one. What it sends you to do is to look for a painting in the museum. So I'm going to just show you. Let's see if it will work. But these are the few paintings in that room, and if you point your camera into one of them, let's see if it works.
At the what?
One
Always doing something weird.
One's like all black and white.
Oh, it worked.
Okay. כן, אבל זה מצא, בסדר.
Oh, mine.
Okay, so it recognized it. It's
I just like pointed mine
Yeah.
at the bottom. I think it's
yeah.
that one's like black and white.
Basically here, it's like a piece of that work. So this is a huge piece, and you kind of walk around it, and it changes, and so that's a pink bow tie. All right, so there are about 20 more games there. If you go to Tel Aviv Museum on your free time, or if you stay here afterwards, you're welcome to play the rest of the games, or Israel Museum if you happen to be there. Now this, it seems like, did you guys have fun? Yeah. And so that made Taglit fun. Imagine how much it can do for museums. Okay, so so basically what we did here, we really used technology. We used technology that we have in our pockets to make this passive experience of going to the museum and maybe listening to an audio guide or just looking at the pieces and just kind of wandering around into an active visit. You got some information, maybe you read the pop-ups. The thing is that even if you haven't, you still probably know now so much and will remember so much about the artwork than you would otherwise when you just kind of walk past it. Most of you. If some of you are art majors, then apologies. Then come talk to me afterwards. I want to talk to you even more if you're art majors. So we're keeping, the reason museums like us is because we're really keeping the original art at the front and center. It would have been hard to play if you weren't in front of the art, and that's why the museums like it, because a lot of the things that people develop for museums are kind of taking the focus away from the art and into the phone. And we don't want that. We really do want to keep you all engaged in the art. And then through the content, through the games, you really get the content. So now maybe you learned something about the art, and it was actually, hopefully, fun and not tedious and passive. And a little bit, and I'll get more into the scalable part when I kind of go back and talk about the product. So this is Museloop. We're changing how museums work. I want to go back and, what's the right thing to show here? Here, so we have some visual. All right. I want to, so this is a metaphor, I'm the old lady, you guys are the young people. So I want to talk to you about myself and my background and how I got to be an entrepreneur. So I was, my parents were born in Argentina and they made Aliyah in '69. And they moved to a kibbutz. They were really Zionist and idealistic and wanted to live in a kibbutz. They're also, sorry? Kibbutz. Who here knows what kibbutz is? All right, so most of you do, the rest of you, but I'll give you, actually that could be interesting. Oh, which kibbutz? Oh, sorry. I was like, how come you guys don't know kibbutzes? Shoval. Yeah, that made no sense. Shoval. It's in the south. It's about an hour south of Tel Aviv. So really not that far. They started at a kibbutz in the north, right around when it was war. And the famous story is that I'm the youngest, so one of my older brothers, he took his first steps in a bomb shelter when nobody even noticed. So fun times. And then I was born. Then we moved to the south, and then I was born. So grew up in a kibbutz. If you kind of have questions about that, then it's not part of the story, but happy to talk about that a bit more later. I lived in Mexico City for 3 years growing up. My dad was worked for the Sochnut HaYehudit. He was a shaliach aliyah. Yeah, he worked for the Jewish agency, so we lived in Mexico for 3 years. His job was to help people who wanted to make Aliyah and move to Israel, facilitate that. So that's my cheat on why I don't sound 100% Israeli, because I went to high school in English for 3 years. Moved back to Israel. I went to the army. I was in the A200 unit, in the intelligence unit, but worked with languages and not with technology. And then I worked, and after the army, I went to South America. I traveled. Another something you might hear a lot of Israelis do, just after the army, go to somewhere and travel. So wherever you'll travel in the world, if somewhere you're going to Europe or India or Thailand or anywhere, or South America, you'll probably bump into a bunch of Israelis. You can talk about Taglit and, you'll bond. So after my undergrad was in economics and communications, I studied in Tel Aviv University. I worked in management consulting. So as you can hear from the story, not very tech related. I don't have a degree in engineering. I worked in a couple of startups when I was in university, but not anything technical. Well, a little bit of QA, but nothing, just because that's what we have here in the ecosystem startups. Management consulting, worked with some of the largest companies in Israel doing management consulting. Any of you considering going to management consulting after undergrad? Smart choice. Any of you studying or will study engineering? Smarter choice. Anyway, so I worked in management consulting, and then in 2010, I moved to New York. I got my MBA at Columbia Business School, and I worked for JP Morgan in investment banking. Any of you thinking about investing in banking after school? Worst choice. No, just kidding. No, it's a great place to start your career, seriously. But this is a whole other conversation we can talk about later. But anyway, I spent 2 years at JP Morgan as an associate doing investment banking, doing IPOs, M&As for companies in the healthcare space. That was even tougher than the army. But you learn a ton. And then I moved, then I switched to a boutique investment bank, worked there for a year. And about a year ago, I wanted to move back to Israel. The first question I get from people when I tell them I was living in New York for 5 years and decided to move back to Israel is? Why? Exactly, why? I don't have a good answer. It's sort of happened. I was supposed to be in San Francisco and then took a job here and was supposed to move there and somehow ended up back here. But the truth is that Israel is home and family and friends and the beach and the weather, and you're only here 4 days, but I trust that you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, moved back to Israel, was getting a lot of offers from all these like strategy, corporate M&A, banking jobs, and just felt like I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something different. I looked, everybody asked me, how did I meet my partner? Where did I meet my partner? The woman who's now my co-founder and partner, and I always say on Tinder. That's not true though. We met on Facebook. But Facebook is a place where if you're Israeli, that's where you look for jobs. So that's just how Israel works. There's LinkedIn, but actually most people find jobs on Facebook. There are a lot of groups of like professional career groups on Facebook. She was looking for someone to work with. I met her. I loved the idea of applying my business and finance and strategy background into something that has to do with art and education. A little side note, my grandfather was an artist, no one you've heard about, but he was an artist. I studied art in high school, always regretted not studying it in undergrad. Both my parents are teachers, so just art and education have always been, all my volunteering was always around education. So it's just something that always just kind of was a passion of mine. I wouldn't even say passion, just something I cared about, something that I always said, one day when I'll make the world, when I'm done making money and I'll switch over to making the world a better place, it will be around education and empowering women. Those are kind of my passions. And then somehow this kind of, okay, now I'll make money, later I'll work for a nonprofit and make the world a better place, they somehow merged in this startup. And I saw the business potential, and I saw it as basically my dream job. Here, I'm getting to create my dream job. So Museloop. So my partner, Natalie, this incredible lady on the left. So usually when we have the picture with like the Marie Antoinette and the young bubblegum girl, I always make fun of her that that's us, because you won't believe it, but she's 50. So we have a bit of I'm 32. So we have a bit of a generation gap, which is actually has been working incredible, because you kind of get kind of a bit of like both worlds. You have the responsible adult, and then you have someone who can learn how to use technology quicker. So I'll kind of start with her story a little bit about how she came up with Museloop. Because when I joined Museloop, it already existed. So I wasn't a co-founder in a sense that we were sitting in a garage and smoking a joint and kind of coming up with ideas. I just wanted to wake you guys up. You seem a little sleepy. It worked. So anyway, she has 3 sons. The oldest is they're kind of about your age. They're 16, 18, and 20. And 18, 20, right? That's about the age group. She has a few friends who are kind of deep in the art world, and she was trying to take her sons to museums. Probably you guys were dragged by your parents to museums once or twice that you can recall. And not surprising, it was a little hard for her to engage them, for them to really understand what's going on. And most surprising was that the museums themselves didn't have anything to help her engage them. And that's when the idea started kind of bubbling in her head. She put some of her own, she invested some, so that we're kind of bootstrapped and self-funded, if you've heard kind of some of these words in the startup context. She put her money into it. She worked with, before I joined, that was all before I joined Museloop, with a product manager who has background in apps and games. And they came up and they went back and forth a few times and then designed the concept that you just saw. She signed a contract with Israel Museum, who are it's the leading museum in Israel. They are a design partner, which basically means we're working for them for free. But they're a first client and they've been great and helpful. So it's always, when you're a startup, there's always the balance between you always want someone to pay you, but sometimes commitment and someone that is willing to really be your partner for the first client, it's more important than money. So that's what we were able to get from them, and they've been a great design partner, and I'll kind of talk a bit more about that as the story unveils. So around that time, he wasn't her partner, but the product manager she was working with had to move to London, and my partner was just really looking for someone to work with. When I saw her ad on Facebook, she was looking for a business development person, and at that point I saw the ad, and I didn't really know, I didn't know what's the stage of the startup. After a couple of conversations, when we both decided we wanted to work together, she talked about, okay, well, you'll be sort of an employee, and I realized the startup didn't really have a lot of money, and she said, once we raise money, we'll... And I basically said, listen, if I'm all in, then I'm all in. I want to be a partner. And that's a commitment. I can kind of tell the story. I see the story from her eyes as well, but she was an only founder, and it was her baby. And to give someone a big chunk of equity from that dream that is not materialized yet, but it's a dream, and dream is very powerful. Not an easy situation. An equity split, and there are all these things between founders, and it's kind of difficult even sometimes when you start something together. But basically, but what she learned and I learned, and we kind of learned that together, and especially when we ended up bringing Dor on as a co-founder later on. That equity is important, but it's more important to find the right team, and it's the most important thing is that everybody's happy. And when we were kind of discussing how much equity should we give Dor, at the end of the day, we'd rather have 5% less of a company with a happy, dedicated, engaged CTO, co-founder, than 5% more of something with the team that's not working. And at that stage, and we're still at that stage where it's still, we have a lot. We have the app, we have the cooperation with 2 leading museums in Israel, we have some conversations in New York, but we still mostly have a dream. And it's still worth bringing on board people who can push that forward, and even if it means we have a slightly smaller part of the pie. But that's my view. You've probably heard some other views. Anyway, so I said, listen, let's be partners. She was very happy. We kind of spoke a little bit about a founder's agreement and said, okay, let's let the lawyers deal with that and just start working. And that's another thing. Lawyers and startups. Lawyers will only hold you back. People say you need them. But we actually worked together for about 3 or 4 months with no founders agreement, just kind of an agreement between us, a gentleman's agreement, a ladies' agreement, before we actually signed the founders contract. And that's kind of another side note, but at the end of the day, it's trust, and contract is, you know, it's the only good thing about contracts is that it forces you to make decisions. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the decision you make and the agreements you reach, and the fact that it's on paper. You know, if somebody wants to work against the contract, none of us is probably not going to do anything about it. But it does force you to think about things, so that's a good thing about it. So anyway, so we started working. My job, I was not CEO then. So Natalie was then the founder and CEO, and I joined as COO, I think was the made-up title. That's another thing, like titles are kind of, you know, at this stage, we kind of, everybody was doing, we were both doing a bit of everything. Natalie was more working with the museums, so Israel Museum, getting them, so all the content, not the app you played, but the other app, the Israel Museum app. The museum actually wrote the content. So that's our partnership with the museum, is that they write the content for us and they market us. So it's a B2B2C model. So she was working with the museum and I was looking for investments. We had a client, we had a product, we needed money. So I started kind of, and I've done a lot of things, but I've never raised money for my startup. And there are a lot of things you can read about it, and a lot of you know, there are articles, but it's mostly about talking to people, and that brings us a little bit to the ecosystem in Israel, which you've seen the movie about, and I'm sure you've heard about. And what's you know, when I was in sorry, I see people falling asleep. When I was it's fine. It's like the chairs are too comfortable. When I was do you have any soldiers here?
Yeah.
What do we say, right, when people fall asleep? Misha mitafetz shi'amod. How do we translate that? If you're falling asleep, stand up. But you don't have to. You can listen to my. Yeah, if you have questions, yeah, let's make it. No, if you have questions, you can ask them. Yeah. So yeah, if you have questions. Okay. Okay. So generally, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you know, questions. Yeah, but if you have questions that are relevant now, then yeah, let's make it more interactive. They probably did a good job there. So where were we? Oh, the ecosystem. So the startup ecosystem in Israel, and what does it mean to be an entrepreneur here? So first of all, everybody knows everybody. You're once removed from everyone you want to talk to, everyone you want to meet, you probably have someone who can connect you to them. So that's a great thing, especially starting to think about investors and angel investors who don't have their email on their website like the VCs. Nevertheless, it's easier to speak with VCs because they're, you know, you always know, that's what they do. That's their job, to meet with startups. So when I started our seed round, the easiest people to reach out to or to speak with were VCs. So I started talking to some of the smaller VCs and just realized they're the wrong people to talk to, because I didn't have enough traction. They thought the museum market was not interesting enough. The museum market is $70 billion annually, so it's a good market, but they didn't get it. We didn't have Door yet, so some of them said that, well, you know, you don't have patented technology, or you don't have a technology person on your team, and that bothered them. So I realized, okay, fine, we're not there yet. We're not in the phase to speak with VCs, so that happened, and in parallel, another great thing that happened to us, we were accepted to an accelerator program. It's one of the leading programs in Israel. It's the A200 EISP accelerator program. Now, the way it happened that we got into that program, and what I'm telling you, it's basically was kind of me learning about the ecosystem here. Because all I knew before starting my own startup is, yeah, I know a lot of people who have startups. Like, you know, I know people, and I didn't know more than that. I think it was probably my first day at the startup. I went to some meetup. Meetups, I was in New York. There are all these meetups all the time. They're great, but the tricky thing about them is that it can be a waste of time if you don't know exactly what you want to get out of them. So first you go and you meet some people and you kind of like just talk to people and talk about your idea and hear feedback and all that. But then at some point they kind of became a waste of time. But that was before they became a waste of time. I went to a meetup and it was organized by the EISP A200 Accelerator. And there was a guy there who was speaking a little bit, giving a little intro about the accelerator, and he seemed a little quirky, and I thought he was like, oh, he's a nice guy, but I don't know, whatever. And then he said, oh, by the way, today or tomorrow is the last day to apply to our accelerator program. And I was like, it's probably a waste of time, but I'll apply. Why not? Whatever. I'll just practice writing. It's my first day, so I was like, I'll just practice how to write my pitch or whatever. And then a couple weeks later, I get an email. You're invited to interview for this accelerator program. We did. And then a couple of weeks later or a month later, I don't know, sometime later, we get a call. Hey, congratulations, you got into our accelerator program. Now, what I was most excited about before starting is that they gave us 5 months of workspace at WeWork in Dubnov. It's like center Tel Aviv. And we got free workspace there. And I was like, okay, great. This accelerator program, which I kind of knew, I wasn't even sure how many startups applied, how selective it was. Turned out, I think about 300 startups applied and 20 got in. So that's a nice validation. But that accelerator program really changed our startup. So what's an accelerator program? Do you guys know what's an accelerator program? Heard of the term a little bit?
You did it.
All right. But this accelerator, some accelerators take equity, give money. That accelerator is a nonprofit. It's a little bit like Mass Challenge, which we also got into. We're starting next month. But it's in that sense, it doesn't. You don't pay money. You don't get money. You don't give equity. It's a nonprofit essentially. And what it does is support the ecosystem from a deep belief that if you support small companies, they'll become big companies. They'll be part of the economy, provide jobs, blah, blah, blah. So what they give us workspace. They give us office hours with lawyers, UX designers, EY, accountants, branding agencies, basically all service providers. We just got free office hours with all of them. We have a network, that's a more important part, a network of mentors. So a lot of, about 30 or 40 people from the industry, investors, serial entrepreneurs, executives at different companies who are basically saying, we'll be your mentors. Feel free to reach out, to spend time with us, we'll advise you, we'll talk to you, we'll answer all your questions. And that's, so we use that a lot. And the third thing is 14 days of workshop, 14 full days, not consecutive. It was like a couple more in the first 2 weeks, and then once every 2 weeks. Workshops, 9 a.m. till 8 p.m. of relevant, fascinating content that is tailored for entrepreneurs, for CEOs. I'll tell you the story of why we switched roles and why I became a CEO. So one of our mentors, who's been very helpful, so first of all, one person from each startup was in that 14-day program, was kind of the person that goes to the accelerator, and that was me from the beginning, even though I was not CEO then, but I was kind of, it was my idea, and she was like, you do that, I have no patience for that anyways. So I went there. I went to the workshops, and so I kind of scheduled the meetings with the mentors, and Natalie joined me for some of them, but I mostly kind of led that part. And he asked me like, well, he asked me how do you split the work? Like, what are your roles? And I said, well, we're both doing biz dev. She's doing more post sale and content and product, and I'm dealing with investors. He's like, okay, well, why aren't you the CEO? I was like, I don't know, I don't care. She was the CEO. Like, I took whatever was left. He was like, yeah, but why aren't you the CEO? I was like, I don't know, we're women, we have no ego, we don't care about these things. But he insisted, why aren't you the CEO? And basically what he said is investors are used to talking to the CEO. If you're not the CEO, yeah, you can explain it, but it just doesn't make sense to them. And they won't tell you that, because we said we never got that feedback from investors. It was like, yeah, they won't say that, but they think that. And it just so happens that I also, the strategy, kind of where are we going, how are we telling it, because at that point, speaking with investors is storytelling, because you're telling them about the great team and you're telling them about the traction, but mostly you're telling them about the dream. You're telling them about what you're going to be and how you're going to get there. And this is all just vision and strategy, and that's kind of part of the CEO's job. So I spoke with her, and it could have been a tough conversation, but it was actually easy, and that's how you know you have the right partners. I basically called her and everyone, I was like, listen, this is what this guy's saying. You know, go talk to the people you think, because she has some people, she kind of her mentors who understand the industry and understand startups. I was like, listen, you know, I don't care about that. We're going to do what's best for the startup. Think about it and tell me what you think. So really kind of as open as possible. Both of us really didn't care. But a few days later, we spoke again. She was like, listen, it's right for the startup. You're doing the CEO's job. You're better at these aspects. You want to do that. I'm better at other things, and you should be the CEO. So ever since, we switched titles in our emails, and we don't have business cards because the old ones we printed are not relevant anymore. And we're kind of basically still each doing what we were doing before, but now we don't have business cards. So what happened with the accelerator? I made a few decisions. First of all, I decided to stop the round. And the reason for that is that I felt that we needed some more validation, some more proof of concept. Some of the questions I got from investors, I didn't know the answer to. And that's okay, by the way. It's okay to say, listen, this is a valid question. We don't know that yet. We're planning to figure it out by doing ABC. And I think the answer is going to be that, but I can't tell you yet. That's a perfectly good answer for investors. But some of the pushbacks I got, I felt that maybe they were right. I didn't know enough to answer the questions. In hindsight, it's getting into a business and straight away starting to market it. Before I felt I didn't pour enough of my heart and soul into it to actually be effective at raising money for it. But that's kind of hindsight. What I did think at the time, like the rationalization was, we had a contract with the Israel Museum, but the app was not in the App Store yet. And going to investors and saying, hey, we have this product, but you can't see it yet. And we have a client, but there are no users yet. It was kind of a tricky situation. We might have been better off raising money on a presentation. So I decided, okay, let's launch a product. Also, I felt like my partner needed me to help her push that aspect a little bit. So I was like, let's stop the round. And at that point, we're also talking to all these mentors and realizing, we basically recrafted our story to be, which I'll tell you in a sec, but basically where we're going to be and how are we going to make money. Because the question on the table was, well, museums are nonprofits, and yeah, it's a big market, but most of it goes on art, and how are you going to make money? And we had a good answer for that, but it wasn't great. And we needed a great answer. And we're in the process of figuring that out. And all that basically stopped around, focusing on pushing, getting to some business milestones, recrafting the story, getting a CTO. So we have Dor now. I'll tell you about Dor in a sec. And then once we're ready, we'll relaunch the funding round, our seed round. Which is what we're about to do in a week or two. When we're finishing the accelerator, there's going to be a demo day, and that's going to be our kickoff of our seed round. We were very lucky finding Dor. Everybody tells me it's harder to find a CTO who's kind of kick-ass developer, fully committed, working with us and not getting any money. It's harder to find a CTO than to find money. And we found a CTO, so hopefully we'll find money. We'll get investors. Dor was also, we were really lucky. I have a lot of friends who were kind of looking for CTOs for months and months. We just put an ad on, you guess it, Facebook. And the door saw it, and we spoke with maybe 4 or 5 other people before him, and we both liked him. He was really into it, and that mentor that kind of got us to switch roles. He met Dor, and it was funny. He was asking him. He was like kind of playing the big brother role. He was like, "So why did you join? Why did you want to join?" After we already we already agreed. He's like, "So why did you want to join? I'm protective of the girls." And like, she's like 20 years older than him, but he was like, "I'm protecting the girls." And his answer was, and I thought it was a good one. He said, I want an interesting market. I want a market that really makes, like, something that makes a difference. And then I think that's a must in anyone who will ever join us as an employee, all our interns, everyone who will invest in us. They're going to do it on some level, and some say it's more important, some say it's the most important. But I think everyone who's ever going to work or invest with me is going to be someone who cares about that, who cares about museum, who cares about doing something in their lives that's significant and that improves the world. So that was the first thing he said. The second thing he said that he likes that we're early enough that he's going to come in and get a big chunk of equity, but we're later enough in the process to have a real product, to have a real business model, to know how we're going to make money, to know what we're doing. He says he got all these people telling him, "Oh, I have this idea. Let's build an app and then see what we're going to do about that." So we were not there. We had a business or theoretical business, but business nevertheless. And that's why Dor joined. We liked Dor because he was basically what he told me is I can learn anything. I don't know everything. I can learn anything, and I want to learn anything. Anyway, so we brought Dor. We gave him a big chunk of equity, and we were happy about that. And
Why are you guys holding spray cans?
why do you think?
Already fun.
Yeah. No, we had a photo shoot. That was like part of the accelerator. We kind of got a photo shoot with a professional photographer, and we have to do something. We have to do something. In the morning of, I just kind of called him, bring white T-shirts, and I went to like the kind of hardware store and bought some spray, and so we did that. I like the questions. Give me more.
How are you gonna make money?
Great question. All right. So let me give you kind of our investors pitch, or kind of how much?
Like 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Oh wow, I speak a lot. Huh? All right, I'll give you a little pitch, and then we'll do a few questions. And okay, so the team, I already told you about the team. So really, our vision, like I said, really bring technology to museums. Bring museums to the 21st century. And yes, it's broad, and you already saw the beginning. So we started with the visiting experience, and I kind of told you a little bit about that and how kind of the first hook, and we already did the demo. So, okay, plug in your computer. We're gonna have to finish soon because my computer is gonna die. So you already saw the demo. All right. So that last point about scalable, affordable, basically the way we built it is that it's not a project. We're not a studio. We're not creating an app and kind of going through this whole development project for each museum. The idea is that it's scalable. So the games you played, they're really templates of games. We have 6 of them. You guys experienced 3. We have 6 templates of games. And basically the idea is that we get the content from the museum. We plug it into the app, and we can basically create an app. If we get all the content in like 2 days, we have an app. Computer died. I can continue without that, but let me see if I have the charger. All right. Anyway, so the scalability, that's a huge deal of that. Basically speaking with museums, and that's kind of where we were kind of going. That was kind of our inflection point with the accelerator. How are we going to make money? So before we were saying our story before was, well, education, museums care about education. In the US, museums spend $2 and something billion a year on education. And the US market, the US museum market, you're going to be surprised by that, but it's like 15% of the global museum market. So there's a lot outside the US. So there are, I don't know, 10, 15 billion dollars in the world going on education for museums. So it's not a small market. That was the good answer. The great answer is that speaking with dozens of museums, we realized that they're behind the curve, not only in using technology to make the visitor experience better, they're also behind the curve on their marketing tools, on knowing their visitors, on data, on analytics. And we're, by getting people to download the app and play the app in the museum, we really know a lot about you guys. Not you, because most of you probably skipped and didn't sign in with Facebook. But, which is fine. We're kind of, we're getting there. But really, we're building the world's largest and first database of museum visitors, who they are, where they are, how they consume museums, where they are in the world. On the product side, where we're developing, the technology we're developing is personalization. So basically, right now, you have the app, you download the app, and it takes you through the museum. The next level of that is, think Pandora, but for Pandora, the music service, not the jewelry company. If you remember that. Does it still exist? Is Pandora still around? But anyway, you kind of said thumbs up, thumbs down about the song, and that's how it picked the next song. So kind of like that, but with the museum experience, or a personalized museum tour. And this allows us to gather even more data about the visitors. And we're going to take all this data. There are 190 million visitors in a year in the top 100 art museums alone. So that we're talking about hundreds of millions of museum visitors a year. That's a lot of data. And we're going to help museums build revenue-driven, data-driven revenue streams, analytics tools, know their visitors, create increased visits, increase their visitors' community, help them create e-commerce platforms, sponsorships, advertising, basically anything that data can do to help increase revenue once there is content and there is data, and that basically opens a whole new world of revenue streams for museums.
So you mentioned empowering women is one of your passions. I just graduated from college with a degree in computer science. And so a huge issue in the US right now is obviously women in technology, the state of affairs there. So I guess I was wondering if you could comment on what women in technology looks like in Israel, or doesn't look like.
Yeah. So that's a good. Personally, I feel like Israel is a better place for women than the U.S. But it's a small. It's by a margin. So it's not. There are less female developers. There are few female founders. I think in Israel it's like 3 to 5%, and I think the numbers in the US are kind of similar. I think Israel is just kind of generally less of a sexist country, and the reasons for that are the army, kind of everybody goes to the army, so that kind of levels the base a little bit, and also just the fact that it's kind of a bad thing in Israel, but it kind of makes it better, that there are really people can afford to be stay-at-home parents. Basically, most families in Israel, both spouses work. You don't have the privilege of, the husband being an investment banker and the wife doesn't work, or the other way around, but which is, kind of doesn't speak loudly to Israel economy. But it just so happens that none of my friends grew up, or almost none of my friends grew up in a house where, their mom didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom.
Have you guys raised any money yet? Like having rounds?
No, we're kicking off the seed round soon.
What are you guys looking to value yourselves at?
So valuation that's a good question. Basically, and people will ask you about valuation, and as a former investment banker, I can play with the numbers so that my company is worth whatever I want it to be worth. And that's true. You put projections on Excel and it can be worth whatever. The rule of thumb is that every round is going to dilute you 20 to 30%. And I'm looking to raise $500,000. And so if you do the math, that kind of puts me at like $1 million to $1.5 million free money. So that's kind of the valuation. And that's another advice I got from a good friend who raised a lot of money for a couple of his startups. even with that, if someone is like, okay, I'll give you the $500,000, but I want 40% and not, or 35% and not the 25% that I want to give, that's fine because the cap table somehow balances out. Because nobody wants the founders to have too little equity. And if we end up raising a seed round and kind of not getting anywhere and not raising and shutting it down, then who cares, right? And if we do raise an A round and a B round, at some point there's going to be a strong investor that's going to say, listen, we are rearranging the cap table, otherwise I'm not bringing in my money, and everybody says okay. So that's another, people are really concerned with valuation and with equity, and I'm just kind of saying the advice that I got, but I believe in that, and that's how I'm gonna run my business. If it's 25 or 35% right now, that's insignificant. The important thing is to have a good investor who kind of believes in the startup and wants to see it grow. To the point about, back to point, we kind of deviated from that, but female founders, for me, I had mentors, women mentors, but I think for now, and obviously I'm kind of, I was hoping to have a CTO who's a woman, but the woman we wanted, she has kids, and she was like, listen, I can't be all in, and I want to be all in, and basically, and that's why we went with Dor. Lead by example, that's kind of the best I can do for now. There are VC partners in Israel who are women, but I also see them. Like, I think the best thing is just help whoever you can, however you can, and at this point, just lead by example. And for me, just being an entrepreneur, and I hate playing that card, but we are playing the card however we can, that we're two female founders. I don't want to raise money on that ticket, but there are difficulties. There are stories that I tell. Most of the investors are men, and the world is still a sexist place. So, it is what it is. But questions?
Last question, guys.
Do you find like a lot of the investment, is it like domestic Israeli investment, or is a lot of like foreign, like VCs, foreign companies investing in Israel?
So I don't have all the data, but it's definitely out there. But at the seed stage, it's very hard to get outside of Israel money for the seed stage because investors kind of want to see that you got investment in your own country. And Israel is a really good place. There is a lot of money here. So we kind of, for a later stage, we'll probably try and go outside. Yeah?